I hope you all there and you can hear us now. Apologies for yesterday. We had some technical issues, and we almost had some today. I've had to use a different PC because my PC wouldn't operate on the sound for some reason. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing these on a weekly basis. The reason is things that are changing, not as quick as they were. So we've tried to reach out to everybody and talk to you all. Or emailed you all just with information that we have. The big one to look at is our blog, because our blog is always up to date with what we know is real, because there's a lot of noise out there and people saying, oh, you can put dividends in the furlough as well if you're a director and all this other stuff, which isn't actually true. So we will only put in what we've verified with HMRC. But what today's the first one of these webinars is for is to just have a few, obviously there'll be some questions that we have already that we're going to go through. I'm just going to summarize everything that is available to you guys really for SMEs, and then where you can potentially get that help if I mean, we've told most of you this in person, but also there's been emails, but it is changing. The details are changing. So at the weekend we had some more changing details, so on certain aspects which we put through the blog, and we just want to make sure everybody's happy with all those as well. And there will be more to come because they're doing all the help and support at the moment on the hoof. They're doing it very quickly and they're doing a good job. So hats up to them. It's government. Normally these take years to do all this. So they are trying to help businesses, especially small businesses like ours. And we are here to try and help you guys and support you guys as much as we possibly can. Obviously, a lot of it's new to us as well, so we are taking time and we ought to understand it, and also we are speaking to other accountants in the groups that we're in to make sure that we've got the understanding correct. So I'm just going to go through the different support things. So there's really sort of 9 main ones for us small businesses. The first main one is the coronavirus job retention scheme, which we sent emails out, on the 28th of Feb, what to do, the procedure, and if we're doing your payroll, we will be doing that for you. So don't worry. Steve will go into a bit more detail when we get to the questions. So I'm just going to go through broad, and then Steve will come to the questions. So that's 80% of your salary up to 2,500 max, and that started from the 1st of March until end of May. End of May for now. We think it might just be a month-on-month increase after that. So we'll hopefully that will be the situation if it goes more than May. So we'll talk about that as well. On the VAT deferral. So the VAT, now that's a really good one to do, and we've asked you all to do that. So you'll have to contact HMRC yourself and ask for the direct debit to be cancelled, and your bank. Steve can give you more details on that as well. Now, all that does is it just pushes it down the pipeline, but it's a good one. So the VAT deferral, then the self-assessment payment on account deferred until the 31st of the 31st of January 2021. So if you're paying on account, you can defer that payment as well. You still have to pay it. Now the other one is, it's not actually one of these 9, so those are the first 2 main ones, but you can, any payments that you have to make to HMRC, PAYE, corporation tax, anything now, we can give you a number, but call them and then ask for deferment of payment, because they will oblige, because they know everybody is having problems at the moment. So the other one is, so the 4th one is self-employment income support scheme. Now that's if you're self-employed. Steve will go into that more detail, because we don't know too much about that one yet. There's not much detail out there or guidance on it. So that's to be, having more details to come. 5 is coronavirus statutory sick pay rebate scheme. Now what that means, if somebody's sick, the statutory sick pay is £94.25. It's not much a week. So you would have to pay that as an employee. With this scheme, you get 2 weeks paid by the government. Now, if you on a furlough, it's not worth doing this. It's only if you actually aren't in furlough that you might want to do that. And it's also if you don't pay them the full salary for those 2 days. So if you normally pay the salary anyway, if they're ill, then you can't really do it. It's more if you put them on statutory sick pay, and then we report it in the payroll on statutory sick pay. Then number 5, there's the coronavirus, number 6, business rate holiday to retail, hospitality and leisure business. So if you're in the holiday, retail, hospitality and leisure business, you can get a rebate, not a rebate, actually a holiday on your business rates for this tax year we're in, the 2020 to 21, so all the way up to the 5th of April 2021. So it's worth doing that. And there's also number 7 is the retail and hospitality grant scheme. Now that is up to 25k. So if you are in retail and hospitality, you can get a grant, as in money, and there's no payment back of these grants as far as we are aware, and I'm sure there won't be, but there's no real detail on specifying 100% if that's the case. Then number 8 is the small business grant scheme. Now that's the one for everybody. If you are paying or not paying, you may be not paying anything in rates, but if you get the small business rates relief, SBRR, or the rural rate relief, the RRR, and the tapered relief on your business rates, then you're entitled to 10k. Now I've had something from them as the council, because that's the council that come directly to you. So what you would have had to have done is been registered with the council before the 28th of Feb, and then you should, well, before the 1st of March actually. So then they will contact you with what you need to do. All I've had to do is, this is for Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, is fill in something online with my bank details and my VAT registration number, my company number, and my address, or Naylor Accountancy's address. So if you're in the Tunbridge Wells area, that should be coming to you if you're doing business rates. Elsewhere, it'll be very similar. It's different each council when it happens. If you haven't been on the business rates, then you won't get this 10k. Then number 9, the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. Now this, they call it CBILS. So this is where the government is, helping supposedly to give you a loan. Now there's been a bit of controversy in the news recently on that. So I'm helping someone at the moment with a business loan, and doing a cash flow forecast. I'll be doing more as well. So it's depends on what the bank needs, but you should be able to get these. It's up to 5 million. I don't think any of you will need 5 million, and you get the first year's interest free, and the government's supposed to guarantee up to 80% of it. Well, that's what they're saying, but they've been talking to the banks a bit more the last week to try and keep them to help more. And it's you can have this loan up to 6 years, and supposedly you'll have to see what the payback scheme is on it. And from what I spoke to some people who do lots of these loans, and they were saying that the rates are low. I can't guarantee what they'll be, and I don't know what they'll be after the year, but he's been told that they're low, so because the government aren't want to pay high rates, because bank rates at the moment at 0.1 is like nothing, so they aren't prepared to pay high rates for those interest loans. So those are the 9. Now we've got some questions, so we're going to go over to Steve. I'm going to let Steve answer these. I'm going to put them to him, and then he can answer them. If you've got any questions yourselves still, do just put them in the question box, and then
yeah, we have some questions in there already.
Okay, we have some already.
So I'll follow up on those if they don't come up with the questions we've already got.
So I'm now going to put Steve on. So you'll be able to see Steve. So the first question I have, and I'll go through these first. Do I have to pay full salary to an employee if I furlough them?
You don't necessarily have to pay full salary. However, this whole arrangement is a negotiation with your employees, because furloughing is effectively a modification of the contract. But since furloughing is intended to stop people being made redundant, I think you'll find most employees will be fairly lenient about that. But yes, the government's guidance to employees is that they are only entitled to the 80%, but employers can make up to the 100% should they wish to do so. So it is a matter of negotiation between yourselves as your employees. You are not obliged to make 100% valence when people are on furlough.
Thanks. And then the second question, or follow-up question: what work can a furloughed employee do? And I know this has been quite controversial, and it has changed over the weekend.
Right. If it's an ordinary worker, the answer is they cannot do anything for you, anything at all. If they do any work, then they are no longer eligible for furlough. They are able to do volunteer work. They are able to take on a job with another employer, which is one of the things that was updated at the weekend. Previously, it was thought only if you already had multiple jobs before this whole situation started that you would be able to do a second job at the same time. The other thing they can do is training. And they can do training even if that is relevant to your business. So if you want to make training available to your employees to give them something to keep them occupied while on their furlough, that's fine, as long as they're not obliged to do that training. At the moment you oblige them to do the training, then it becomes payable work activity.
Thank you. I mean, one thing to note on that as well is that if you do furlough people, theoretically they can work for a competitor. So this is sort of came up. So if you're definitely worried about that, you want to have something in the contract or get them to sign something saying they can't work for a competitor whilst they're on furlough. And I think that's very legitimate to ask that question. And the thing here is that if somebody wants to work at Sainsbury's or anything like that, they absolutely can, because we've had that situation. All right, next question. As the director of the company, can I furlough myself? And we've had quite a few questions on this, and one of these as well.
And this is why I was clear with the previous question. We're talking about order employees, because the position with directors is different. Directors can be employees of the company, but they're also officers, and in legal terms, those two things are separate. Now, originally it was thought that the very fact that directors usually have to do something simply to keep the company ticking over, even if it's generating income, meant directors couldn't be furloughed. We looked at it, we were with the opinion that if there was no work, it would still be possible. And fortunately, the guidance has now come out last weekend to support that view. So directors are allowed to undertake whatever minimum work is deemed necessary to meet their statutory duties. It is a little bit of a vague definition, but essentially it comes down to, as long as you're not providing services to customers or generating income, you should be okay doing the day-to-day work, keeping the records going, dealing with the claim for the furloughing of employees. That should all be considered under the statutory duties of directors. The possible danger area, which has been highlighted by a lot of people in the industry, is if you do any advertising. So simply posting on social media to support people, remind people that you're there is fine. But if you do anything that looks like it's touting for extra work at this time, that's when you're wandering into a grey area where, even if it doesn't actually generate any extra work, it might be considered breaking the rules of the furloughing. But yeah, otherwise, simply just keeping in touch with your customers, letting you know you're still there and you're going to be happy to deal with them once the crisis is over. That should all be fine.
Thank you. I mean, it's also worth noting that if you are a director, if you do an 80%, that on the it would be on what was on the 28th of Feb salaries, which is should if you're with us on payroll, it'd be 719 normally. So that means you'd get a pay from government, a grant from the government of £575.20 a month. If you haven't been working since March, I mean, you let us know all this. On the email I sent on the 28th of February on the Saturday, just please go through that and then send it back to us if we do your payroll. If you haven't got that, just email me and then I'll just send it to you. So you can do that, even if if you're just wanting to know what the situation is. The other thing is that the government have said they're entitled to go back 6 years, so they'll to audit all of this furlough. So it is, if they do work for you and they're furloughed, you could be in trouble if they audit you. Obviously, more people are doing the furlough than they expected, so it's going to be a big task for them. Okay, next question. When will I get the money for furloughed employees?
Well, that is a very open question. As Nikolai said earlier, they have finally announced when the portal will be available, which is the 20th of April. So that is when we will be able to put in applications on behalf of our clients. But as to when the money will come through, there is no timescale on that at the moment. Theoretically, it will operate through the same system that HMRC currently uses to send refunds out. So barring anything that it looks as suspicious, you would expect it to come out within a week or so. But obviously there will be high volumes of claims, as Nikolai said. A lot of people will be applying for furlough. That is likely to delay things. So we hope they will have the system set up in order to deal with it promptly, but this time we can't really give a timetable on when the money will actually arrive.
Thank you. Does commission in salary count towards the furlough? And this was a guidance that came through at the weekend, which a lot of people have been asking.
Right. Originally, they said bonuses and commissions were excluded, so this has actually changed. The change is that compulsory commission can be included. Now, the guidance hasn't specifically defined compulsory commission, but the only real definition that makes sense is if an employee has a right to commission written into their contract. Then commission can be included in the calculations. It's when you decide to pay extra commission because you've had a particularly good month, or you pay a one-off just round bonus to people. That's what it's excluded. But if the right to commission based on certain performance targets is literally written into an employee's contract, in our opinion, that meets the definition of compulsory commission, and therefore that can be included in the calculations.
Thank you. On that note, still on the furlough, I've just got a question here that came in, just saying a furloughed employee can't take on another job if it's written into your contract that they can't, though, surely. So it's actually asking the question if it's in the contract already, right, that can't they?
If the contract already have a term that says the employee cannot take another job, then no, they can't. But that is a legal agreement between yourself and the employees. Whether you wish to carry on enforcing that clause in this unusual time, or whether you wish to allow employees to take on extra work because the reduced furlough pay is significantly lower than their normal monthly pay, that is a matter between you and the employee. But yes, strictly speaking, if there is a restriction in the contract that prevents employees taking on another job while they are working for you, then they cannot take on another job while they're furloughed as well, because furloughing is still considered to be working for you under any existing employment contract.
I have to just put a caveat in there. We're not employment lawyers, so if you want the contract checking by anybody, we can't guarantee that. So just please be aware of that. There was other. Can you backdate their director's furlough if you haven't worked for a couple of months?
if you genuinely haven't done anything, the first date that the furlough can run from is 1st of March. So if you genuinely haven't had any work since 1st of March, then it should be possible to backdate the furlough for the director to that date in exactly the same way as it is possible to backdate the furlough for ordinary employees to that date. The only caveat on that is have you genuinely done nothing in that time, nothing to try and generate income, nothing to try and provide services to customers, because obviously even the thought of restricting what you were doing was not in place then. But if literally you've had no income and no possibility of income in that time, we cannot see a problem with furloughing from 1st of March for directors in the same way as ordinary employees.
Yeah, and just to note, we are doing that with some directors because they definitely have not been working. Another question is if somebody's been sacked at the start of all this, before furlough was introduced, can they backdate it to the 1st of March?
Right. This again, to a certain extent, this falls into a legal question. What the guidance is saying is if an employee was made redundant prior to the scheme being announced, because it was appreciated some businesses were affected at the beginning of March, they'd already taken the decision to make their employees redundant because they didn't have any work to do in that period, and then the scheme came in, and those firms are going, oh, we jump the gun a bit on making people redundant. So yes, in theory, if somebody was working for you at 28th of February, has subsequently ceased, you can potentially take them back on and furlough them. If they were sacked for other reasons, there may be other legal ramifications there, which, Naylor has already said, we can't really comment on legal matters. So if the sacking was for reasons other than redundancy, it's not strictly speaking covered by the guidance as it stands, so that might be something that's worth taking legal advice on. Also, if you do take an employee back on, you are taking on all the employer responsibilities in respect to that employee. So say, for example, if they were just coming up on the 2-year period where they gained more employment rights, and they stopped just before that, and now you take them back on, so there is continuing employment, so it goes over the 2 years, you're potentially taking on a lot of extra employment liability. So yes, you can take employees back on, and ones that were made redundant, it's definitely without a doubt. Ones that were sacked, it's probably worth reviewing the situation from a legal matter, but if you do so, you've got to bear in mind that you are taking on all the responsibilities of them being an ongoing employee, should you do so.
Yeah, just to note there, the couple of things, exactly what Steve said. We've had one situation where somebody came back to them, they'd actually handed the notice in, they'd left on the 27th of Feb. They hadn't actually started their new job, but they'd worked a 2 month notice period. Now the problem, if that employer had taken them back on the furlough, they'd be going into their 2 years and suddenly have rights, and then they might suddenly have an issue getting rid of the person afterwards, because although they left on good terms, they didn't want them anymore because they'd sort of moved on and had to replace the person. So it's definitely worth bearing that in mind. We've also had, excuse me, had somebody. We've also had somebody who has had to make people redundant literally a week before or two before the furlough. So what would happen in their case is they laid them off. They didn't make them redundant initially. So that we will be furloughing them, but from the date that they actually did that. So yes, you can go back to the first, but you have to be aware of the period they started or they finished work and that furlough would have started. So they can't be doing any work, as Steve has been saying all the way through. And just a follow-up question again, this is all from Derek, the last two, is thanks Derek, is that if somebody is asking about the 3 week period, Steve, so if somebody is on furlough, they have to do 3 weeks and then coming back and then can they go to work and then go back on furlough? So do you want to say something about that, Steve?
It is possible for people to come on and off furlough. The minimum furlough period has to be 3 weeks, and my understanding is if someone comes off furlough and goes back on furlough again, that new minimum furlough period has to be another 3 weeks. As to is there a minimum amount of time they have to work between furlough periods, there is nothing in the guidance that says there is a minimum period that they have to work in between. It could be a case of a job suddenly appears that's only a couple of days, and subject to the original furlough period having been long enough that you're able to bring people back in for that, and then you would be looking at furloughing them again. But I have not seen anything that says there is a minimum period people have to work between furloughs. The most usual reason for wanting to take people on off furlough is you're wanting to sort of share the pain of it by furloughing half your workforce and then sort of swapping them over. So you have half of your workforce on furlough for 3 weeks and half of your workforce working, and then the ones on furlough work and the ones that were working go on furlough for 3 weeks. But yeah, the minimum furlough period for each time you furlough has to be a minimum of 3 weeks, subject to the scheme ending, which at the moment is dated 31st of May. I would be surprised if it didn't extend beyond that.
Yeah, and as I said, the extension, we believe, I mean, this is not just us, but that it'll just be once a month that will happen. So it'll go from, till end of June. So next question on furlough is, do I have to pay employees the full amount of the grant straight away? Or can they wait basically for the grant to come through?
This is a subject that has been of much debate, technically, because I suspect if you do not make the payment up front, then there may be problems with claiming the grant, because HMRC will be checking the historical figures. The ones that the calculation is going to be based on the submissions under RTI, and the new payments to employees under the first furlough scheme will be reported under RTI, and you should be reporting under RTI as you are making payment. So I suspect if you do not make payment but are making reports under RTI that you have, in order to make sure your claim for the grant goes through, there are potential problems there. Now, obviously, there are businesses where there are cash flow issues, where they literally cannot pay furloughed employees until they receive the grant. So one would hope that the HMRC will take a balanced view on this. But I would say if you are able to pay the furloughed employees and you do not, there is the potential for trouble down the line, though there's nothing specific on that front. It has been a subject of much debate in accounting circles in recent days, and there are a lot of arguments on both sides on that one.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, you should know that there's no true guidance on that. It's just what we believe and what people are believing. If you are not going to pay it until you get the grant, it's worth having that in your furlough agreement. Oh, that's one thing. I mean, I have mentioned this before, and I've sent out a template, which is only guidance. It's just for you as an example. But everybody who's furloughed does need to have a signed agreement saying they agree to the furlough. The reason for this is it won't be in your contract because furloughing is brand new to this country. It's an Americanism. So don't do furloughing unless you have that agreement from them, and signed by the employee. And if you're a director, we'll want it from you, because that's your agreement to it as well. So we just want everything documented if we do your payroll. You will want it as an employer from your employees, because if that isn't happening, you may be in trouble later down if you have a disgruntled employee. They may be fine now, but you don't know when. I would also just be wary of, if you do have any agreements that someone's furloughed, that yes, they will do a little bit of work. Be very careful with that, only because if they become disgruntled later on, they could go to HMRC and say, look, this is what happened. So it's just some legal guys, some solicitors have been talking about this in as an area just to be wary of, because there are cases where people are doing that. So we're going to move on to the next type of question, which is oh, sorry, this is still on there. So how do you actually get it, the grant? So I sent out the email on the 28th of March. Now that is pretty similar. The only difference is now we know the portal's open. Well, it should be open on the 20th of April. If we are doing your PAYE, we will be able to do that for you, and we'll be doing that for you. If we don't do your PAYE, we can't do it because we need a PAYE agent code. You'll have to go to whoever is doing your payroll, or if you're doing it yourself, you'll need to go to the government gateway and set up the PAYE portal for yourself, and then do your PAYE through there, the grant retention scheme. One thing we're going to send out an email probably on this just in case, and it's more for those that are doing their own payroll. There aren't many of you, but it's just all having, you know, but it's just worth knowing what you need to do, because it's not going to be straightforward as if you haven't got it already set up. Just oh, we've mentioned working elsewhere, if someone's furloughed. Self-employed, when do I get something and can I still work? So if you're self-employed, Steve, oh sorry, you're on mute, Steve, sorry. You're still on mute, Steve.
Right. Okay. As far as working is concerned, unlike employees, the self-employed are able to continue to work and still be eligible for the grant. From that point of view, the only criteria is that you have suffered a reduction in income. Obviously, there are various other criteria that you have to meet, but your work doesn't have to have stopped entirely. As to when you will get it, unfortunately, that is still very much up in the air. The earliest we've got is beginning of June, and there's not even a firm date in June for that. Again, it will almost certainly be an online portal in the same way that it's going to be for the job retention scheme. So as soon as we hear more detail on that, we will be passing that out to our self-employed clients. But yeah, if you still have self-employment work available, you are perfectly allowed to carry on doing that without any risk of losing the grant. I've also had a few questions from people in recent days about whether applying for universal credit will affect the grant, and what I'd be saying to them is the government is actually encouraging the self-employed to apply for universal credit as an alternative source of income. So given they are doing that, it would be, I think, quite bad of them if they were suddenly to turn around and go, haha, no, you got universal credit and you're no longer eligible for the grant. But what I will point out is when the grant comes through, it's more the other way around. When the grant comes through, that will be considered income that will affect how much universal credit you're entitled to receive.
On that as well, just if you are self-employed and you have a profit of over 50,000, you're not going to get it. If you are on 50,000 and self-employed, you shouldn't be self-employed. You should be a limited company, because it's absolutely not tax efficient. The other thing is it's your average over the last 3 years gone past on the profits of those that you will theoretically be getting from the government. So I'm just going back to furlough. Yeah, and this is a question from you. Just the distinction between laid off and being redundant. Does it impact matters such as contractual statutory compensation, and how best to express it into the furlough agreement? Now, we're not solicitors and lawyers, so there's a massive caveat on this. I'll let Steve answer this, but I have thoughts on this as well, obviously.
Yes, I mean, this is very much a legal question. Just in case anyone's worried, I'm aware there are a few questions further up we haven't got to yet. I will make sure that we do get back to those earlier questions, because we've got a few more coming in as well. But right, on that, so is there a distinction between laid off and being made redundant? That is more a legal question. Essentially, redundancy is terminating somebody's employment not because you're unhappy with what they're doing, but because there is not sufficient work for them. There are very clear rules on how to select people for redundancy and what they are entitled to if they're made redundant. Say more legal question, but my understanding of laid off is you are getting rid of somebody for some reason not entirely tied to not having sufficient work for them. It would, because there are very clear rules on something that is definitely qualified as redundancy, the difference will almost certainly have an impact on contractual and statutory compensation obligations, because there are very clearly defined compensatory obligations if you make someone redundant, which will usually be based on how old they are and how many years they have been working for you, as a statutory minimum, and that's even before looking at anything that may be written into the employment contract that covers that. So if you have any concerns about that sort of issue, it's probably best speaking to an employment lawyer first, and coming back to us for the for any calculations that are involved on it.
Yeah, just on that as well. If you're laid off, you actually just not getting paid, and you're not actually redundant. So, and then after being laid off, you normally go on to redundancy, and it's normally up to a month, I believe, but I might be wrong on the period. Now, the other one option is that once this furlough's come out, and if you still have no work for the people, you can ask them to take a pay cut. You have to agree it and have it in writing. The other one is you can ask them to take holiday without pay if you still want them to come back to you, obviously. You can actually lay off as well for the minimum period, and then it goes into redundancy or the holiday period. But this is more of a legal question, so this is only my understanding. I'm not a legal person, but it's worth definitely seeking a bit more advice on that if it's something from a legal person, if it's something that is of interest to you. So when do I have to pay the VAT if I have deferred it?
The payment of VAT, if you deferred it, that is due at the end of the tax year. So I understand 5th of April next year, 5th of April 2021. But so the important thing to note on that is you will have to pay it. So if you are able to put the money aside in order to do that, then you should do so to make sure that he has the funds available. Then it's simply a cash flow benefit. It is not a cancellation of the liability.
Thank you. Next question is, how do I get the small business grant scheme? I've sort of covered that. Derek has a question on that as well. Just is this available to every industry, everybody?
Right. The 10,000 is available to all industries where your premises are eligible to either small business rates relief, rural rates relief, or both. So that's the 10k grant. The retail, hospitality and leisure industries will get a 10k grant if they've got small premises, and they can get up to 25k if they've got premises with a rateable value up to £51,000. The 10 grade councils are supposed to be contacting businesses directly on this. Some are, some aren't. It must be said it has been very variable across the country. It is worth checking the website of the local authority, because most of them have got a coronavirus page set up, which will include where they're how they're dealing with the grant. For example, down where I actually live, which is down in Hastings, Hastings Council has an online application form, but they are emailing out to ratepayers to alert them that this form exists and that people need to fill in the claim details. And the main reason that you will need to fill in something is because they'll need to know details of the bank account that the money is going to be paid into, because not all business ratepayers will have a bank account, especially if small business rates relief has been sufficient historically to bring their rates bill down to nil. So yeah, the 10K is for everybody. You may need to go onto your local authority website to find out how they're actually sending out, because there haven't been clear instructions handed out, so there's no uniform approach across the country on it.
No, I mean you should be receiving it from your council. I mean, we have got a question here, so you should get something from them. If I mean, where we are, we're in a block with loads of other businesses. The actual landlord gets the relief for us. And they've actually been in contact with them at the council, and they've been sort of telling us what we need to do next. So I've literally just had to go online. I haven't had to contact the council myself. They came to us, and then we've had to do it. The question here is, am I eligible for the 10K government grant despite the fact I'm not yet receiving the relief? Now the problem there is it depends when the council have you as a business rate, that you were supposed to be paying business rate and getting the relief. So it all depends on that. There's a lot of cases where they start on the 1st of March and just not, there's no real clear, as far as I'm aware, clear guidance on that, but they are trying to help everybody. So if you have gone in prior to the 28th of February, I would have that you'd get some help.
Not 28th of February for the rate relief scheme. It's the 11th of March is the key date for the rate relief scheme. So I've got a question here: moved into a new office on 9th of March, not yet been set up with an account to claim business rates relief. So are you eligible for the grant? So I've got seeing that question, I've got the guidance open in front of me, and it says businesses which on the 11th of March 2020 were eligible for relief under the rural rate relief scheme and small business rate relief scheme are eligible for it. In that case, I would say if you are in those offices at 9th of March, you would be liable to business rates from 9th of March, and therefore you would be eligible for any relief related to those business rates from 9th of March. And that being the case, you should be eligible for the grant under this scheme. And the fact that the account wasn't actually set up at 9th of March, at 11th of March 2020 should not be a block to that. But actually, this is an unprecedented situation. That's it. From my interpretation of the rules there, that you would have been, assuming your business premises are small enough, you would have been eligible for small business rate relief at the key date, the 11th of March. It is probably worth trying to get in contact with your local council, pointing out that you were in there before the 11th of March and asking what you need to do in order to get the account set up to claim the grant, because the grants are going to be tied to account numbers. So if you haven't got the account yet, you are going to need that to make the claim. But I'd say you have a good case for being eligible for the claim, because you were already occupying the offices at the key date that determines whether people are entitled to it or not.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, there'll be timing. There'll be a matter of timing there. How long it takes. We have another question just on the directors not working. It says they've just started to launch a advertising campaign on social media, but they have no work or anything coming in. So is this allowed if they furlough themselves?
As I said earlier, this is very much the grey area. I said if it's an entirely new product, and you're literally at the moment just seeing if there is interest for it. You aren't at this time actively selling it, so it could probably be argued that you're not actually actively promoting and actively seeking income, but that's definitely pushing sort of deep into the grey area. It's probably something best avoided if you can, but I'd say the fact that you've done it already, but it's an entirely new product, you don't actually have the sale yet. It's more, it sounds more like market research rather than actively selling. So yeah, it's a grey area, I'd say. If it was looked at, but yeah, definitely that's pushing into the area where there is a risk that furloughing will be considered valid, because that is actually sort of work on behalf of the company.
Yeah, I mean it is a grey area. People are saying that you can do that in the media and everything. So the big thing is, are you income generating and actually sending out invoices and things like that? Again, the guidance isn't 100% clear, but it is, and it is up to you at the end of the day. But it isn't quite 100% clear. If you aren't working properly, then you can argue it. I mean, it will be a grey an area. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I can see a couple more we haven't covered. Someone's asked, as a director, can you still take dividends out of the company whilst on furlough? And the answer to that is there is nothing actually precluding it at the moment, and the very fact that dividends have been excluded from all the schemes so far, very much indicating that they are not employment income, they are not self-employment income, and the government is not treating them as that. I can see absolutely no reason why you cannot take dividends, provided the company has sufficient profits to cover them. The government has clearly shown that dividends are distinct from everything covered by the scheme, and therefore they should have no interaction with any of the benefit schemes that are currently running.
Thank you.
And there's another one: if you're furloughed, are there any other benefits we should be applying for? That's a question, because we don't generally deal with benefits on a day-to-day basis. It's really difficult for us to answer. It's really much more of a DWP question. You should be able to apply for universal credit depending on what income you have at this time, but what you would be able to apply for beyond that, that's really a bit of a specialist area, because all of the different benefits have different qualification criteria, and it's not one we're really geared up to be able to answer, unfortunately.
I can just see one more. Do late paid invoices coming into the company have any effect on whether you can furlough?
Again, the key thing is definitely not doing things that generate income since the furlough started. So if this is simply money coming in for work done before the furlough period, then that should not be a problem at all. It's just an admin task of receiving money, and indeed, if you're paying suppliers, that's just an admin task of making sure that your creditors are kept up to date, that the company doesn't get a negative credit impact from not paying invoices. So yeah, provided that is for invoices that were pre-furlough, that should not be a problem at all.
No. And another more question is, if an employee is furloughed and undertakes work without my knowledge, what action should I take? Now, I think we've almost covered that already, because we've said they can work, but I'll let you.
Right. I'm guessing in the concept, because we have, as you say, established that they can work for someone else. I'm assuming the question in this case is has done work related to the business. So say a customer that knows the individual employee has contacted them directly about getting something done while the company is otherwise closed down for furloughed. Again, this really comes down to a legal question. If you got your furlough agreement written correctly, the agreement that you've got with your employees, that should cover a clause that if they do something that causes the grant to be lost, then the furloughed wages would be reclaimable as a result of that. But yeah, it's definitely much more of a legal question and something you should probably check with an employment lawyer rather than us. But yeah, I'd say that you do want to cover yourself that if an employee does something without your knowledge that would cause you to lose the grant, that you have some way of recouping the payments that have been made to them in good faith on the basis that otherwise they would have been made redundant.
Yes, and on that, they are entitled to work if you don't say anything in your contract elsewhere. But if it's an employee, you should probably specify if you are working elsewhere or do take up work elsewhere, you need to let me know, because I think it's only fair for any employee, because they are working for you. You may even have in the contract that they can't work elsewhere. Okay, any more questions? I can't see. If you have, just
right there's one about, if I furlough myself as a director, am I still able to do quotes for future business, or is this considered working for profit? Again, I'd say that would probably be not allowed, because yeah, you are literally doing something in order to generate income for the company. Even if that income is not, that business isn't expected to happen until after the furloughing period is over, you're putting yourself in the position that you can get that income earlier than if you actually started doing the quotes once the furloughing was finished. So I'd say doing quotes, you're definitely erring into the doing work to generate income, which would be not permitted under the furloughing arrangements.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, I can't really see any.
Just skimming through, because I have been marking questions as we've answered them there.
There's one just on the table that I sent. I don't know if I'll just cover that quickly. On the table I sent, there's a question just from you, Mandy, obviously. Where are you paying 80% of salary subject to the £2,000 cap? That is basically just saying yes, you are paying it. The question that marked there at the time, because this was like a few weeks back, was do you want to pay it now, or are you going to pay it in whenever you get the grant? You may also want to pay 100% of the salary as well. So obviously there's 80% of salary or the £2,500 cap. Bonuses aren't included. Compulsory contractual commission is. Any other sort of commission that isn't contractual or not in the contract isn't. So, and it's normally as the salary was on the 28th of Feb, or if it's a variable one, because you work in hours, then it'll be the average over the 12 month. I think there's, Steve, you mentioned another method that they allowed the same last year, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Yeah, the calculation is based on. Let me just get that page up in front of me, because I got that on my other screen here. Of course, it's a long way down the page. It is the higher of the earnings for the same month in the previous year, or the earnings for the last 12 months. And for anybody that's worked less than 12 months, it's the average of however many months they've worked. So Yeah, it's a relatively straightforward calculation to deal with.
All right, if there's no more questions, we've actually, we've almost done the whole hour, which is amazing. I didn't know we'd choose the whole. Now that so I hope that has been helpful. The reason for doing this is just to try and answer any questions because you all have similar questions all in one go. We do have the blog. Please do go to our blog online. It's under news and updates as well, and it's on the home page at the bottom. We are constantly updating it with the most recent details, and it does change. I mean, I think the last one Steve put on was only yesterday, wasn't it? An update.
It's a couple of days ago, but yeah, it was the big update on the job retention scheme, especially covering things like the director's eligibility for furloughing.
Yeah, I mean, there is some more coming out just yesterday on charities. We don't know the detail on that, but that's more of an individual charities basis. And there could be some more coming out this weekend. The big thing that we're all waiting for and is to find out if the lockdown situation is going to be carried on till May, which most people are believing it will be. So if that's the situation, obviously we have got furlough until May, and we are here to help. So if you've got any questions, email us or ring us. We are going to do this again next week, similar time probably. We haven't got the date in either Wednesday or Thursday next week, probably, and I'll send that out to everybody. I'll send a recording of this to you if you wish to have it. You don't have to, but and I'll send it to the whole group as well that we have. If there's anything that you want us to cover in the next weeks, do please send us any questions beforehand. You're welcome to ask them in the session. We're very happy to do that as well. Obviously, if you give us a bit of time, we may know the answer if it's a complicated one. And it could only be like half an hour, 15 minutes the next week, because we've covered virtually everything now. So it may not be as long, but we'll do it as long as required just to help you guys. So have you got anything to add, Steve?
No, I don't think there's sort of anything further. I think we've covered most of the things that people have been asking me in recent times as well. But obviously, as I say, we're looking at having another webinar here. But if you have queries between now and then, and you're wanting to know the answers earlier, we're still here. So drop us a line.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you everybody for coming on this Thursday. Have a good bank holiday. It seems weird, a 4-day week, because everyone's working from home anyway. It doesn't seem that much different. But be safe, and we are here to help. So do let us know, and be safe. Have a good Easter. Bye.
Bye.